Where are we?
This is Mark McNease in New York City, and you're listening to another edition of Live Mic with Mark. Welcome to the podcast. This is Mark in New York, of course. It says that in the beginning. And welcome to another Live Mic with Mark podcast. My guest is a returnee, a recurring regular guest that I've had over the last couple of years. It's Cathy McNease, who is a nationally certified herbalist and a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine. Hello, Cathy.
Hi, Mark.
You're all the way in Ojai, California. How is it there?
It is a gorgeous day. It's probably 70 degrees. I was out gardening. So many flowers blooming. It's really beautiful.
It's a nice day here, but a little muggy, a little bit humid, but it's okay. I'll survive. Now, the topic tonight is the role of inflammation in illness and aging. So let's just dive right into that. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that inflammation is an underlying cause of many ailments. So let's talk about that.
Of course. Inflammation is probably one of the most important, biggest predictors of how our body ages. The more inflammation we have, the more health challenges we typically will present with. So any of the illnesses that end with itis, gastritis, arthritis, gingivitis, colitis. Itis means inflammation.
Oh, okay.
So before those diseases have presented with a name, there was probably some degree of inflammation or irritation going on in the tissues. And there's so much that we can do diet and lifestyle wise to address inflammation. This is one of the things we have a lot of control over, is what we put in our mouth and our activities. So there's a lot that we can do for inflammation. One of your readers or listeners had posed a question on the last podcast about inflammation, and I want to be sure to answer that question before I go any further. And I think the question was, he mentioned that he was using garlic as an anti-inflammatory herb, and was that sufficient? The question was that sufficient, or would it be a good idea to do more than one?
Mm-hmm.
Inflammation is such a big problem underlying so many health imbalances that I would suggest the more the better. Most of the fruits and vegetables, the colorful fruits and vegetables, are going to have anti-inflammatory properties. So I would not rely on only garlic. I would use several. Turmeric would be another one that you could easily put into the diet. So colorful fruits and vegetables would be another way to get an assortment of anti-inflammatory foods.
Okay.
So as I'd mentioned before, lifestyle in sort of the way we manage our diet. When we're eating a lot of processed foods, refined foods, that's the diet that is going to contribute to inflammation and make those diseases that are related to inflammation worse. Mm-hmm. So when I'm advising patients that have inflammation, usually inflammation presents with pain or swelling. So pain or swelling, and think about different places in the body that might present, and inflammation is probably at the root of it. So when I'm working with patients that are starting to clean up their diets to help with this problem, I will suggest that they avoid the worst culprits. So let me just go through the worst, most problematic foods. The unhealthy fats, so deep fried foods, trans fats, too many processed foods, like fast foods are deep fried. So that's one important area to reduce as much as possible. Denatured grains, so white flour products, create inflammation. Sugar is way up at the top of the list in terms of its inflammatory process and what it creates. And then artificial colorings and additives. will contribute to inflammation. So reducing those 4 groups of unhealthy foods as much as possible, and then increasing the fruits and vegetables is a very good strategy when you're trying to reduce inflammation.
I was going to ask you too, do you think that the awareness of inflammation as a problem is recent? Because it seems like it is to me. I'm not to you because you've been aware of it for a long time, but I don't think the public has been.
No, it's been in probably the last 10 years that it's been looked at, particularly in connection with dietary choices and how they contribute to inflammation. So yes, it is in the last 10 years that there's been a lot more attention paid to that inflammatory process being at the root of many health issues. In Chinese medicine, we call it heat. And so for thousands of years, we've been treating inflammation. We just didn't call it inflammation. We called it heat. So it's somewhat useful for me as a practitioner of a traditional medicine to have a Western term, inflammation, which people can understand and relate to a little bit better than being told, oh, you have some internal heat. That doesn't necessarily make sense, but they can relate to inflammation. So there is a blood test that can be done when you do a routine blood test that measures what's called C-reactive protein, CRP. And that's a very good measure of general inflammation in the body. It sort of gives you an idea of where you are. And the lower the number, the less inflammation you have in the body. If you have not done blood work, but you have either a lot of pain or swelling, guaranteed you have inflammation, as that's the result when we have an inflammatory process.
I'm just sitting here wondering off the top of my head if there's some correlation to emotional inflammation. Because I'm a hot person.
Yes, exactly.
I just feel like my emotions are inflamed a little more than I would like them to be.
Yes. And in Chinese medicine, we don't separate the emotional being from the physical being, from the mental being. They all are part of the same being. So if we are inflamed and it's causing our joints to hurt, that same inflammation may be agitating the emotions in the nervous system. So there's a physical way to look at it as well. The inflammation agitates the nervous system.
Okay.
So when the nervous system is agitated, then the emotions can go awry.
What are some physical things people can do? Nutritionally, you've addressed some things.
Yes, okay. Getting regular exercise. The movement of the qi and the blood via movement helps move out some of the chemicals that get produced when there's inflammation, and it brings new fresh blood into whatever the area is that's painful. So let's say it's hip pain that you're dealing with. If you're able to take a little bit of walks, a little bit of exercise, that blood flow into the hip is able to get good nourishment into the place where the inflammation is and remove some of the chemicals that result from the inflammatory process. Another part of reducing inflammation is reducing stress. As you brought up, many people have inflammation in their emotional body. And when you are impaling yourself on a stressful life day after day after day after day, it will take its toll on the physical body eventually. Yeah. So whatever tools you can do to manage your stress, for me, it's always breathing, slow breathing, imagining that my feet are sending roots down into the ground to ground me and nourish me and cool me off and comfort me. So breathing is my lifeline when I'm getting into my crazy mind. For some people, it might be prayer or meditation or some sort of exercise may be your stress relief. But if you have a lot of stress in your life, it is going to inflame you and cause physical problems eventually. So important to pay attention to that.
Well, I will, because I do. I have a lot of stresses in my life. So
most people in modern life have a lot of stress. It goes part and parcel with what we have created here on this planet, unfortunately.
It does, and I think, not to veer off too much here, but I also often think that as a culture, as a society, we place this bizarre value on being stressed out. It's like people at work eating their lunch at their desk constantly, like every day, as if there's some value to that, as if that means you care about your job, because that you never go for a walk, that you never get out for this hour that you're legally entitled to. And I see it in so many ways where even with technology, with the iPhones and people getting into elevators they can't even ride 3 floors in an elevator without taking out their iPhone. It's like they can't deal with human contact that isn't distracted with all of these stressful things. And it's just a bizarre value system to me. I don't understand it. I'm part of it, certainly, but I hope I'm making some sense here. It's like, why do we think that there's some meaning to being stressed out, like some good meaning? There's benefit. There's no benefit to being stressed out. It's just going to put you in an earlier grave.
I suppose often we feel powerless to change the stress. So if you can write something in the story that makes it worthwhile, you're showing that you have good work ethic. You're showing that you're serious. You're showing that you really mean what you're doing. You know, if you write some sort of line in that, maybe it makes it more tolerable that you can't change it, but it really doesn't. It's, you go back to the thinking about what sort of chemicals get released in your body when you're in that fight or flight response, when you think a tiger's chasing you, and the same chemicals get produced if you're just thinking about the tiger that chased you, or if you're just imagining that there was a tiger chasing you. For all of those, you still have the same hormonal response, stress hormonal response in the body, which ultimately does damage.
Well, that's what happened to me this weekend with a work situation where I spent the entire weekend, starting at 5 o'clock on Friday, imagining these stressful confrontations and things. And then I'll stop about this, but I also think that we have a tendency, maybe not you, but to project our stress, to like put our stress onto other people. And I see it at work. It's like, I know that you're stressful. I know that you're not happy, but it's not my problem. And you shouldn't think that this belongs on my shoulders. It doesn't.
Well, one of the lessons I had to learn in recent years, a wise old woman told me, don't let somebody else's crisis become your crisis. And I have learned to do that because I often am dealing with a patient who's in crisis, and it's absolutely imperative that I stay in a calm place to be able to attend to them, hear them, whatever. And this week I had a lot of stress had to get my car fixed, had to take my dog to the vet, I had a new chiropractic appointment. There was a damn race through our town, bicycle race that had traffic all screwed up by Amgen company. And so like I was starting to get into that spun out space that I'm always protecting myself from in other people. And I thought, okay, let's just do the same thing. Don't let that crisis become who you are. And I sat down and just started breathing, and before long, the busyness in my head was a bit relaxed. So I was able to go through all of the same details of the week that had to be done, but not edgy about doing it. It was really quite useful. Yeah. But it's difficult in a work situation when you have, I don't know about you, but I've had bosses from hell, and it can be really challenging when you have to keep your mouth shut and not say what you really would like to say. have had that experience, and it's you just keep your eye on the prize, which is whatever your retirement. For me, it was I loved my students, I loved the medicine, and I loved teaching. So I had to just not pay so much attention to the administration and the frailties that I saw there.
Yeah.
But it's hard in a work situation, I know.
Yes. Now, do you have any more thoughts about...
Oh, I just want to mention there's a few simple teas that people can use that are anti-inflammatory. Turmeric, I'd mentioned before, is a wonderful herb to be cooking with, and you can also get it in capsules. Great for inflammation of many different types. But a few of the teas that are useful for inflammation are peppermint tea, fresh ginger root tea. That would be a really good one for people with joint pain. Chrysanthemum flower tea, chamomile tea, and holy basil tea. That holy basil would be especially good for that inflamed emotional state. So rotating around on those may be a good choice in using some anti-inflammatory teas. And then again, more colorful fruits and vegetables can help no matter where the inflammation is.
Excellent. Well, Cathy, thank you again for coming on and talking about a topic that can always be talked about, because I think that it's prevalent in our lives in so many ways. And
yes,
as I get a little older, I start to have inflammation in my knees and here and there and everything. So it's really good to know that what it is and what it can cause and how to treat it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. We'll be back in a few weeks with another wonderful topic with Cathy McNease. And you just enjoy the wonderful Ojai weather.
I'm doing it.
Okay. Bye.
I'm going back to the garden.
All right. See you.
Bye.